Europe and made Italy the world capital of innovation in both the arts and sciences. One of the best-known Renaissance characters is Leonardo da Vinci, famous as much for his science as his art. Leonardo predicted a whole host of modern inventions, from helicopters to diving equipment. The latest of his design to achieve modern-day recognition is a robot. Few people realize that Leonardo designed and probably built the first humanoid robot in Western civilization. The man who's bringing Leonardo's designs to life is Mark Rosheim, who's built up his own robotics company from scratch. Mark first became interested in Leonardo's robot when he read a book by Carlo Pedretti, a great Leonardo scholar. Pedretti had discovered fragments of robot designs in the 1950s scattered through Leonardo's sketchbooks, but he couldn't see how they went together. Working at Florence's Museum of the History of Science, Mark Rosheim is trying to solve the mystery and rebuild the armored knight that is Leonardo's robot. Leonardo was economical in his use of paper, so robot sketches are tucked away in corners of his drawing books. Bit by bit, Mark has been piecing together the puzzle, building up an image of Leonardo's robot hidden for almost 500 years. And he's finally come up with this, a kind of robot knight in shining armor. With the museum, Mark has created a computer animation that reproduces the way he believes Leonardo designed his robot. The knight can wave its arms, move its head via a flexible neck while opening and closing its jaw. A mechanism in its chest gives power and control for the arms, while an external crank powers the legs. In fact, Leonardo's knight has more movement and flexibility than many modern-day robots, but it's this aspect of his design that spurred Mark on to make his own robot. He found that Florence provided just the inspiration he needed. By walking in the places where Leonardo also walked, Mark started to get inside the head of the Renaissance genius. And he began to see how he could design his own robot using Leonardo's first principles.
His anatomical drawings are unique, and they gave me the information I needed to emulate the complex joints and muscles of the human body.
The result of this collaboration between a 15th century visionary and a 21st century wizard is the robotic surrogate. NASA commissioned it with the aim of putting a humanoid robot into space. Following Leonardo's lead, Mark has created a high-tech version of the 15th century original. He started with a sketch of the human skeleton and then recreated it in stainless steel. And this is the result, the surrogate robot. Its secret, Leonardo-inspired articulating joints.
This is an early joint that we made. This is a finger knuckle. The idea is to get the same type of universal ball and socket type of motion that the human has.
Leonardo's first principles haven't just helped Mark design the knuckle. Using anatomical drawings as his guide, Mark has worked on the action of the wrist, attempting to move away from the more traditional door hinge type connection and create a true universal joint for the robot. This is a wrist from an industrial robot that he designed, and it demonstrates how he achieved the totally flexible type of motion he was after. It's able to turn any amount, in any direction, a genuine universal joint. Finally, Mark pulled all the elements together, creating a robot commissioned by NASA to boldly go and colonize space. Instead of the cables on Leonardo's original plans, Mark uses electric linear motors to act as the robot's muscles. The actuators are mounted on the limbs just behind the joints they drive, a concept that directly mimics the human body. Leonardo would have approved. Nearly 500 years after he first had the idea of a humanoid robot, Leonardo da Vinci's revolutionary ideas look set to take off in the modern world. Mark's robots are moving into operating rooms under the sea and will even be used in the development of new drugs, and they'll have a role on one of NASA's high-profile projects. NASA is using the robots to help with maintenance on Space Station Freedom, an extraordinary tribute to Leonardo's vision, all sparked by a few doodles in a 500-year-old sketchbook. Coming up, how science is helping ease the nerves of anxious animals. Just crisp tempura. But there's another result too, an awful lot of used cooking oil. Most of that goes to waste, but now they've discovered a new use for it, making fuel for cars. Every day, this van tours the tempura bars of Tokyo collecting used oil. The man behind this enterprising scheme is Takeo Sumaya.
I read in a newspaper about a scheme in America to convert vegetable oil into diesel fuel for use in cars. But because they're using new oil, it works out very expensive. So I thought, why not use old oil? Then I can make it cheaper.
So, Mr. Sumaya built this facility in a suburb of Tokyo to recycle all that old vegetable oil. Through this great maze of pipes, valves and tanks, he pumps 265 gallons of old tempura oil each day. First, the oil is filtered to remove particles of food. However, vegetable oil is too thick and sticky to use in a car engine, so the sticky oil is mixed with a special catalyst and pumped into a large vat where it's kept warm. The whole batch is stirred for a few hours while the catalyst breaks apart the oil molecules. Alcohol is added, which binds to the smaller parts of the oil molecules to make fuel. The cooking oil is then separated inside this vat. It's split into two substances, glycerine, which drops to the bottom and goes off to make soap, and the rest of it, biodiesel, which can be used to fuel any diesel car or van. The fuel is sold at their own filling station, and it seems people are willing to put converted cooking oil into their cars. Mr. Sumaya already has over 100 customers, including some major companies. The cost is about the same as normal diesel, and what's more, it's doubly green. Not only is it recycled, but it also produces substantially less soot and sulfur dioxide than ordinary diesel. But the question is, could we do the same with other types of oil? What better way to find out than to try it with the oil from one of the world's other favorite types of fried fast food, fish and chips. And there's one place in Japan where fish and chips oil can be put to the test. This is the Pig and Whistle, a Japanese attempt at a traditional British pub. And of course, they serve good old-fashioned fish and chips. They've saved some of their old fish and chips oil, so let's see what Mr. Sumaya makes of this. They're using a lab bench version of the processing plant to transform the oil. After an hour of mixing with the catalyst, the oil begins to separate into two layers. The top layer is what we want, biodiesel. A final bit of cleaning and it's ready for the engine. So now it's time to put it to the test. The processed fish and chips oil is put into this small diesel car. There's some diesel in the tank already, but they say when the processed oil is poured in, it won't make any difference. So let's see whether they're right. It seemed to go absolutely fine. This fuel is no more expensive than ordinary diesel, and it's certainly much greener. In fact, if this test is anything to go by, then maybe we should process all the vegetable oil we can. When we return, the musical robot's trying to make it big in the charts. The band Manus, the four younger brothers of Elvis Costello, are hard at work in the studio recording their single, Star. It's a familiar, if time-consuming process. In order to get the best possible sound, the sound producer Patrick records 18 separate tracks of instruments and voices. Over the next week, he'll use his skill and artistic judgment to mix the tracks together to make his version of the band's song, balancing the vocals, bass guitars and drums at levels he thinks sound good together. But within this building is a rival sound producer, a budding young artist who's also been hard at work over the past week creating a second version of the song. It's actually a robot created by Kevin Warwick.
A basic mix is created in what we call the parent generation. It's a first go, a first attempt. That's then improved over a number of generations using genetic ideas, crossing over, mixing, and even mutating.
The robot makes an attempt at being creative by producing a few basic mixes from the original tracks. A human picks out the best of these, which provides the starting point for the next generation of sound mixes. And so it goes on. To get an independent assessment of the two mixes, we called in sound producer Pete Lewis, who's mixed for stars such as Elton John. Could he hear a difference?
Quite a large difference. I'll play the first one from the human mix. Just going into the first chorus. Hear how the lips and the dynamics go. And if I play roughly the same section from the computer, it doesn't have the same dynamic lift that you put in humanly. Yeah, I'll play the human one again. Okay, and this is the computer's version.
So, what's his final verdict?
It's good, but it's not brilliant. It lacks the sort of human instinct to it, and it lacks the ability to make mistakes, which are sometimes the best things. So I don't think I'm out of a job just yet.
And now the real proof. What do the boys in the band think?
The bass drum's very loud. Bass drum, lots of bass drum. Yeah, that's good. Enough drums. Yeah. It's a bit muddy, it's a bit dull. It needs to be brighter. The vocals not a half as loud as it should be.
So, although Robopop may be the way to go in the future, the human touch looks like it'll be around for quite some time. That's all for this edition of Tomorrow's World. Join us again next time for more glimpses of the future.